In the heart of Ghana, where the Ashanti forests meet the forgotten villages, there exists a truth that the elders whisper only after sunset. Some instruments were never meant for human hands. This is the story of Kwame Mensah, a young ethnomusicologist who learned that lesson too late. What happened in the village of Akyeremade in the summer of 2019 remains unexplained by authorities. But the villagers know. They've always known. The drums remember everything, and sometimes they call back what should remain buried. Kwame Mensah had always been drawn to the music of his ancestors. Born in Accra but educated in London, he returned to Ghana with a mission: to document the sacred drumming traditions before they disappeared into modernity's noise. At 28, his academic credentials were impressive, but his understanding of the old ways was dangerously shallow. He arrived in the village on a Thursday afternoon in July. The village sat in a clearing, surrounded by dense forest that seemed to press against it like a living wall. The moment he stepped out of the bush taxi, he felt it, a heaviness in the air, as if the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. The village chief, Nana Kofi Boki, was a man whose age was impossible to guess. He could have been 60 or 160. Deep ritual scars marked his cheeks, and his eyes held the kind of knowledge that comes from truly listening to the world.
Nana, I'm honored that you've agreed to let me study here. The phantom from drums of the Ashanti. They're legendary. I hope to record not just the rhythms, but the stories, the meanings.
Young man, you speak our language well, but do you hear what it truly says? The drums are not just instruments. They are voices. They speak to the ancestors, and sometimes the ancestors speak back.
Kwame smiled politely, the smile of an educated man indulging superstition. It was that smile that sealed his fate.
There is a place, a shrine in the forest 20 minutes walk from here. Inside are drums that have not been played in 67 years. Not since the night.
The chief paused, his eyes growing distant.
Not since the night they played themselves.
Kwame felt a chill despite the humid heat, but his academic curiosity burned brighter than his instinct. He pressed forward with questions, but Nana Kofi would say no more. Instead, he assigned a young guide, Abena, the chief's granddaughter, to help Kwame with his research. Abena was 19, home from nursing school in Kumasi for the summer. Unlike her grandfather, she walked between two worlds comfortably. She wore modern clothes, but knew the old prayers. She used a smartphone, but could read the forest like her ancestors had.
My grandfather doesn't tell stories without reason, Mr. Mensah. If he mentioned those drums, he's trying to protect you.
Protect me from what? Old drums in an abandoned shrine?
From disturbing what should not be disturbed.
But curiosity, that ancient human curse, had already planted its seeds. That evening, as the village settled into sleep, Kwame lay awake in the guest room, his mind spinning with possibilities. Sacred drums untouched for decades. The footage, the recordings, the academic papers. This could make his career. He decided he would find that shrine. The next morning, Kwame convinced Abena to take him to the shrine. She agreed reluctantly, but on one condition: they would only observe. No touching, No recording inside the sacred space. The forest path was barely visible, overgrown with creeping vines and elephant grass. The deeper they walked, the quieter the forest became. Birds stopped singing. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. Then they saw it. The shrine was a small stone structure, old beyond measure. The doorway was low, forcing visitors to bow as they entered. A deliberate architectural choice, Abina explained. One must show humility before the spirits. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of earth and something else. Something ancient and mineral, like dried blood and copper. And there, arranged in a perfect circle, were 7 drums. They were magnificent. The largest, the Fontom from Master Drum, stood nearly 3 feet tall. Its body was carved from a single piece of Tweniboa wood, darkened with age and adorned with symbols that seemed to shift in the dim light, filtering through cracks in the stone. The smaller drums, the apentema, supporting drums, surrounded it like children gathered around a parent. But what struck Kwame most were the drumheads. They were made from elephant hide, stretched so tight they seemed almost translucent. And on each head, painted in white clay, was a face. 7 drums, 7 faces, 7 expressions frozen in what Kwame could only describe as terror.
The faces of the 7 drummers who last played them.
That's symbolic, right? Artistic representation?
No, those are their actual faces, taken the night the drums played themselves.
Abina told him the story, her voice barely above a whisper in the sacred space.
67 years ago, 7 master drummers came to this shrine for a forbidden ritual. They wanted to summon something. Power, wealth. I don't know the full story. My grandfather doesn't speak of it. But they succeeded in calling something forth, something that demanded payment. When the village found them the next morning, they were still sitting in a circle around these drums, their hands frozen on the drum heads. They were alive, technically. Their hearts beat, their lungs breathed. But everything that made them human, their souls, their minds, their very faces, had been taken, peeled away and bound to the drums themselves.
What happened to them?
They lived for 3 more days, faceless and mad, before their bodies finally gave out. And on each of those 3 nights, the villagers heard it, the drums playing by themselves. The same rhythm over and over, the calling rhythm, the summoning.
Kwame should have left then, should have thanked Abena, returned to the village, and written about the oral traditions, the cultural beliefs, the fascinating mythology. But he didn't, because as Abena spoke, he had been slowly reaching into his bag. And now, his portable recorder was running. Abena's eyes went wide when she saw the small red light.
What have you done?
It's just audio. I'm not touching anything, just like you said.
You brought technology into a sacred space. You're recording the ancestors without permission. We have to leave, now.
But as they turned to go, Kwame's equipment bag caught on the edge of the master drum. It was barely a touch, the slightest brush, but it was enough. The drum rang out. One note, one single thunderous note that seemed to vibrate through the stone, through the earth, through their very bones. And in that moment, Kwame could have sworn he saw the painted face on the drumhead move. Just slightly. Just enough to shift from an expression of terror to something else. Anticipation. Hay ran, stumbling through the forest, branches tearing at their clothes, until they burst into the clearing where the village lay, baking in the afternoon sun. Everything appeared normal. Children played, women prepared food, men sat in the shade, but Nana Kofi was waiting for them, standing in the center of the village square. He didn't need to ask what had happened. He knew.
Which one of you touched them?
Kwame confessed. The chief listened in silence, then spoke words that seemed to age him with each syllable.
Then tonight the drums will play, and they will call to you, Kwame Mensah. When you hear them, you must not go. No matter what you hear, no matter what you feel, you must stay in your room. If you go to them...
He didn't finish. He didn't need to. As night fell over Akyeremade, the village transformed. Every door was shut tight. Every window shuttered. Kwame could see faces peeking through cracks, watching him. The guest room suddenly felt less like accommodation and more like a cell. Abena brought him food but wouldn't meet his eyes.
I've told my grandfather everything. He's performing protective rituals, but... Mr. Mensah, please. Tonight, no matter what happens, stay inside. Promise me.
Abena, I appreciate the concern, but I'm sure...
Promise me.
He promised. The hours crawled by. 10 p.m., 11. Midnight approached. Kwame tried to rationalize. Mass hysteria, superstition, confirmation bias. But his hands shook as he held his phone. The signal bars empty. The battery mysteriously draining, despite being fully charged that morning. Then, at exactly midnight, he heard it. The sound came from the direction of the shrine. Boom, 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 boom. A rhythm he had never heard, yet felt he had always known. It seemed to synchronize with his heartbeat, or perhaps his heartbeat was synchronizing with it. Kwame pressed his hands to his ears, but the sound came from inside his head now. He could feel each beat in his chest, his throat, behind his eyes. And then he heard his name, not spoken, drummed. The talking drums were calling him, syllable by syllable, in the ancient language of the Phantom from Kwame, Mensah, come, come, come. He found himself standing, walking to the door. His hands moved without his permission, sliding back the bolt. No, he whispered. I promised. But the drums laughed, if drums could laugh. The rhythm changed, became mocking, playful, seductive. Come, little scholar. Come see what you sought. Come know what the ancestors know. His feet moved, one step, another, out the door, into the village square. It was empty, every house dark. But he could see, clear as day, because the moon was full and impossibly bright, hanging in the sky like a silver drum itself. The forest path lay before him. The drums called louder now, welcoming, celebratory. Other sounds joined them, bells, shakers, the clapping of invisible hands, a full ensemble playing just for him. He walked. He couldn't not walk. The forest parted before him. Vines pulled aside. Roots flattened themselves to smooth his path. The forest itself was ushering him toward the shrine. And then he saw them. 7 figures standing on the path ahead. 7 drummers, their backs to him, their hands moving in perfect synchronization, though they held no drums. They were playing the air itself, and the drums in the shrine responded. The drummers stepped aside, creating a corridor, an invitation, a command. The shrine doorway gaped before him, darker than the surrounding night, and from within, the 7 drums waited. Kwame stood at the threshold of the shrine, his mind screaming at him to run, but his body drawn forward by invisible threads. The drums sat in their circle, and in the moonlight streaming through the cracked stone, he could see the faces painted on each drumhead clearly. They were all watching him. And then, a sound behind him. Footsteps. Mortal footsteps.
Mr. Mensah, Kwame, stop!
The spell broke. Just enough. Kwame turned and saw Abena standing at the edge of the clearing, clutching something in her hands. A small gourd, filled with what looked like ash and herbs.
You have to fight it. Remember who you are. Say your name, your full name, your father's name, your lineage. Claim yourself.
The faceless drummers moved then, turning toward Abena with jerking, unnatural movements. The drums inside the shrine began to play themselves, a warning rhythm, angry and possessive. But Kwame, given that single moment of clarity, spoke.
I am Kwame Mensah, son of Isaac Mensah, son of...
Keep going. Your grandmother's name.
Grandson of Akua Afriye, great-grandson of Kwasi Baki. I am of the Oyoko clan. I am of the Ashanti. I am myself.
The faceless drummers froze. Then, one by one, they began to fade, becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone. The drums in the shrine fell silent, but not before one final sound. A sigh, almost. A release. Kwame collapsed. Abena ran to him, breaking the circle of protection she'd drawn with the ash from her gourd. She pulled him away from the shrine, back toward the village, half carrying, half dragging him. Behind them, something changed in the shrine. The drums began to crack, slowly at first, then faster. 67 years of pent-up spiritual energy released all at once. By the time they reached the village, the sun was rising. Nana Kofi stood waiting, along with 3 other elders. They listened as Abena explained what had happened. The chief was quiet for a long moment, then placed a hand on Kwame's shoulder.
The drums released you because you remembered who you are, because your granddaughter called you back with the names of your ancestors. But there is always a price, young man. The spirits do not give without taking.
What price?
You will see.
Kwame Mensah returned to Accra 2 days later. He deleted all his recordings. He withdrew from his research program. He told everyone it was personal reasons, health issues, nothing more. But those close to him noticed changes. He couldn't listen to music anymore, any music. The moment drums played, even in a church service or on the radio, he would freeze, his face draining of color, sweat beading on his forehead. And sometimes, late at night, his roommates would hear him speaking in his sleep. Not in English, not even in Twi. In a language older than words, a language of rhythm and breath, the language of the drums. 3 months after his return, Kwame's hands began to move on their own at night. His roommate found him one morning, sitting on his bed, his hands moving in complex patterns against his thighs, playing invisible drums. His eyes were open, but seeing nothing. Boom, 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 boom. The same rhythm from that night. The calling rhythm. The doctors called it a tremor disorder. PTSD related. They prescribed medication. But Abina knew better. She visited him once, against her grandfather's wishes. She saw what was happening and left him with a small cloth bag filled with protective herbs.
Keep this with you. Always. It will help. But Kwame, you need to understand. You're marked now. The drums let you go, but they didn't forget you. And someday, maybe years from now, they might call again. And next time.
She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The shrine in the forest collapsed completely 3 days after that night. The villagers left the ruins untouched, letting the forest reclaim them. They say that on certain nights, when the moon is full, you can still hear it. A faint rhythm in the darkness, the heartbeat of something ancient and patient. The drums played themselves once. They remember. They wait. And somewhere in Accra, a young man lies awake, listening to the silence, terrified of what he might hear within it. Because some instruments were never meant for human hands, and some debts are paid in rhythms that never end.